Now, to that con being played on Australians, a Ponzi scheme that's hiding the fact that Australians are actually getting poorer. It works like this. The government brings in massive numbers of immigrants, more than 500,000 just last year. And it does that to pump up the growth figures, right? More people means more economic activity, and that in turn gives the government more money to spend. And it's worked politically today. The growth figures released today show that for the last 3 months of last year, we just avoided recession. Happy days. Growth for the last 3 months of just 0.2% or 1.5% for the year. And that led the Treasurer to today make this very weak boast.
Slow growth is still significant growth given the challenging global conditions combined with the impact of higher interest rates here in our own economy. Now, we need to remember that towards the end of the year, Japan and the UK both went into recession.
But here's the con. Japan, it doesn't want or allow mass immigration. It values preserving its culture, its unity, its social bonds. And the only reason that we aren't also in recession with Japan is that our government, in contrast, imported more than 500,000 immigrants in 1 year. 2% of our population in 1 year. And that, of course, helped make the economy bigger. Got the growth figures today. Yes, but when you divide that slightly bigger economy among the much bigger population with all these new immigrants, we actually got poorer per capita. We got poorer by 1% in the year. Joining me are Cameron Milner, former Chief of Staff to Labor leader Bill Shorten, now Director of GXO Strategies, and Michael Costa, former New South Wales Labor Treasurer. Michael Costa, the growth figures today, what did they tell you?
They told me that monetary policy is working, that the Reserve Bank's interest rate hikes over the last 18 months or so are slowing the economy. Look, I find it extraordinary that Jim Chalmers tries to take any credit at all for this. All of the heavy lifting on slowing the economy, and the reason we're slowing the economy, Andrew, of course, is to take the wind out of inflation. You're right to say that, on a per capita basis, those growth figures really don't reflect what people are feeling on a daily basis in terms of the cost of living. But in terms of inflation, and there's two components of this, I think we're heading on the right course. And the issue for me is not that. The issue is, as we go forward, some of the government policies that are in place may be playing against what the Reserve Bank's doing. And what I'm talking about, and you mentioned one in your lead-in, Bowen's crazy energy schemes. Remember, what held up the growth numbers was energy-intensive mining industries. And secondly, Burke's changes to industrial relations may well take the wind out of all of that business investment, and you could see this thing being really in difficulty if they can't get these policies put together. So I look, the figures show that the Reserve Bank's monetary policy is slowing inflation. What's it mean for the average person? It means misery for a while, and when the short-term comes and we get some interest rate cuts, they will be very small, and that pain will be there for years to come. That's the reality of the situation.
Yeah, but Cameron Milner, you've got a lot of experience in government on how how to spin these figures, all that kind of stuff. Does this work politically for the government? It's got the mass immigration in. It now can boast, hey, listen, look, we got growth. Other countries don't. And inflation is coming down. Does this count as a victory, or does the reality of people actually getting poorer trump the spin?
Well, I think the personal recession that Australians are going through certainly trumps the spin, and that's going to be the government's problem, because they might have brought another 500,000 people in, opened the floodgates to a lot of immigration, but the services haven't kept up, our roads haven't kept up, our hospitals haven't kept up. So the reason why people can't find a house to rent or go to a GP on time or get to work on time because the congestion is government hasn't kept up with the floodgates of the migration that they've let rip to create a 0.2% growth at the end of last year. So we paid a huge transactional price of 500,000 extra people looking to use our roads, our hospitals, our schools and everything else to get out of a technical recession, whereas Australians are living through a personal recession right now.
Yeah, but Cameron, the thing is, we've been so habituated to thinking of big immigration as a good thing. Big Australia, big immigration, welcome, open country. You know, we're so anti-racist that we'll let in almost anyone. All that kind of stuff. And Labor's never made a point of immigration being too high. And I just wonder whether the public has been sucked in by this narrative or starting to see through it.
Well, I think people will see through it because we've previously had it with high productivity or high growth, and the economy's absorbed migrants. I mean, my parents came across as migrants as well, or their parents as well. So we're a migrant nation, but we've always done that as a growing nation, as a productive nation, and that's not what the government's policies are doing right now for us.
What do you make of that, Michael? Do you think the people are starting to make immigration an issue? Because I don't see it really being pushed by politicians very hard.
Well, Andrew, it is an issue. It's an issue in the housing market. That's where you're seeing it. That 500,000 people or the 600 that's going to come in next year feeds straight into the housing market. And that's why this government's stumbling. He can get up today, Chalmers, and take credit for a slow growth. But the bottom line is their housing targets have been blown out of the water. And that is what's impacting on families trying to get into the housing market and their kids, the aspirations of their kids. And I think that's where you're going to see the kickback on this government. It's housing policy. It's a failure.
Yeah, I think that's probably correct. I mean, I know I bought my first property at about the age of my youngest child almost, maybe a few years older than that. But none of my kids are in a position to buy a house now. Something really has changed for the worst. Former Labor Prime Minister Paul Keating, I don't think he was a big fan of Bill Shorten when you were working with him, Cameron. But
no.
Anyway, he's now attacked. He's now attacked Labor for being too hard, he claims, on this nice communist dictatorship he keeps promoting. He particularly attacked Foreign Minister Penny Wong and the head of ASIO for warning about China as a security risk, saying the anti-China Australian Strategic Policy Establishment decided some new China rattling was overdue. But he said Malaysia at least understood China far better and wasn't getting sucked in. Penny Wong, who was actually born in Malaysia, hit back today, as did other ministers, even the Prime Minister. Have a listen.
Look, he's entitled to his views. I don't lose sleep over it, but I would say this: it was a new position to be lectured about the country of whether or not I understood the country of my birth in Malaysia. But as I said, he's entitled to it.
This is a woman who, over the last 2 years, has made up for years and years of neglect. She's doing a fantastic job. So when it comes to a difference of opinion between Paul and Penny, I go for Penny any day.
I think Paul is wrong about Penny.
On Penny Wong, I think quite clearly he's wrong.
Cameron, I'm sure you've had many occasions to have to think about this. What is behind Keating's manic defence of China as some kind of peaceful, tolerant country that we should not offend even when it's threatening war?
Well, I'm like Chalmers. I'm a Keating fan as well. I think he's been a great treasurer. But more and more these days, he's looking like a senile, Sinophile. He's loving of China, despite everything China's doing to us, what they're doing to their own people as well. It's a blind spot for Paul, and it's appalling. We definitely have a China problem. I don't think Penny is actually strong enough on China. Richard Marles isn't doing enough on defence, and Albo won't raise issues of national importance when he's got personal meetings with Xi. We need to be stronger on China. We need to push back further and harder. But Paul Keating's simply an apologist for China and is pretty much as cuckoo as one of his Swiss clocks that he so loves.
What do you make of it, Michael?
Look, I like everybody in the Labor Party admire Keating for his period as Treasurer. I mean, his period as Prime Minister's open to debate. But look, I think he's got a conception of China that's the China of Deng Xiaoping when it was opening up to the world and, seeking to take hundreds of millions of people out of poverty through effectively capitalist relationships, relations of production from capitalism. That's China's long, long gone. Now it is a society that's ruled by a kleptocracy that's interest is only in protecting its own power, and part of that is threatening all of its neighbours. And where Penny Wong is right, and I agree she's been weak, is on the South China Sea. It's all about the South China Sea. And remember, Keating's also critical of the US, and the only lever we have is the US to ensure that the South China Sea remains open to our trade.
Michael Costa, Cameron Milner, thank you very much to you both.